I held my breath against the fine grit of the high desert air, the sun already relentless even this early, beating down on the jagged peaks surrounding Silver Gorge. I was standing at the entrance of the Devil's Tooth Mine, a name that felt less like a relic of folklore and more like a dire warning. My entire career, the countless late nights, the PhD, the very solvency of my new firm, it all rested on this impossible contract. I wasn't here for the gold. I was here for the unforgiving challenge of making something unstable hold. The silence, broken only by the hiss of aged machinery, was shattered by the arrival of Julian Vance. He didn't walk, he claimed the space. He was the kind of man whose wealth wasn't shouted by logos, but was simply etched into his demeanor. The cut of his bespoke suit defying the dust, the sheer dark weight of his presence. He looked less like a businessman and more like a mountain that had decided to walk. He stopped, towering over me, his dark eyes, the color of old whiskey and secrets, sweeping over me in one devastatingly slow appraisal. It was a look that stripped away the professional armor of my tailored suit and saw only, well, I couldn't tell. But his words sliced through the air with the precision of a geological saw. "You're too young," he stated, his voice a low, gravelly challenge that didn't request a reply but simply delivered an absolute truth. There was a raw, undeniable friction that instantly ignited between us, something far hotter than the high desert heat. I felt the familiar protective knot tighten in my stomach, the one that usually precedes a professional battle. "And too soft," he added, his gaze lingering on my face, assessing, always assessing. He was looking for the crack, the professional fissure he could exploit. The audacity of it, the sheer, unapologetic arrogance nearly made me smile. I straightened, deliberately meeting his gaze, letting the slow heat in my chest, a dangerous mix of professional fury and an alarming physical curiosity, dictate my response. "I've been called many things, Mr. Vance," I replied, my voice steady and controlled, a precise counterpoint to his rough tone. I injected a subtle professional contempt into the final word. "My structural reports are solid, unlike your mine." It was a gauntlet thrown, a direct, undeniable challenge to the core of his business and his pride. I saw a flicker, a quick, almost imperceptible energy in his eyes. The tension that filled the air was thick, suffocating, and undeniably laced with a sensual awareness I hadn't prepared for. This wasn't just a negotiation. This was a confrontation, and I knew in that moment this impossible contract was about to become something far more volatile. This was the starting pistol, and the race was against the impending collapse of both the mine and my composure. The days bled into weeks, a relentless cycle of heat, dusk, and danger, all taking place deep in the echoing, unstable tunnels of the mine. Julian Vance insisted on shadowing my every move, a silent, imposing sentry whose presence was a constant, distracting weight. His observation wasn't born of trust. It was born of a controlling possessiveness that was maddening, yet thrilling in a way I couldn't rationalize. I could feel the intense heat of his gaze on my back as I charted seismic stress points, and the knowledge that this formidable, untouchable man was utterly focused on me fueled an adrenaline rush that was separate from the professional danger. One afternoon, in a particularly narrow, unstable section, I was focused on securing a key pressure reading when the earth beneath us shuddered. It was a minor tremor, nothing critical, but enough to trigger a cascade of loose shale. A sharp slab broke away and momentarily pinned my arm against a crumbling support beam, sending a jolt of white-hot pain and a cold wash of panic through me. Before I could even issue a sharp, professional curse, Julian was instantly there. The cold, controlled businessman vanished, replaced by a man moving with the primal, feral speed. His voice, usually so deliberate, was a low, guttural sound as his large, powerful hands grasped the debris. He didn't pull me free immediately. Instead, he braced his body against mine in the tight space, his chest crushing against my back. I was dizzy with pain and proximity, inhaling the intoxicating, specific scent of him. Metallic dust, expensive cologne, and the raw musk of exertion. He was a wall of unyielding muscle, and the contact was blinding, erasing the cold, structural analysis from my mind. "Don't ever do that again," he murmured, his breath hot and urgent against my ear, the command laced with a deep, protective fury that made the fear give way to a staggering rush of sensation. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drum against his solid frame. "Do what?" I managed, my voice barely a strained whisper. "Rely on anything but me," he growled, and with a wrenching force, he pulled the debris clear and hauled me free. The moment was over, the professional distance restored by the immediate necessity of checking my injury, but the shock of his possessiveness, the sheer, undeniable physical need it ignited, lingered in the suffocating air, an unspoken truth that threatened to shatter every professional boundary I had so carefully constructed. The danger was no longer just the mine. It was him. The unrelenting cycle of tension and danger finally reached its breaking point one cool desert evening. After a grueling, successful inspection that had kept us underground for nearly 14 hours, I emerged exhausted, smelling faintly of sweat and rust. I wasn't surprised to find Julian waiting outside my small, temporary cabin. He didn't speak a word. He simply stood there, an unreadable silhouette against the fading twilight, and handed me a bottle of impossibly expensive, perfectly chilled Sauvignon Blanc. His silent challenge hung in the air. Come look at the stars without the dust. The structural engineer in me should have refused the unprofessional invitation, but the woman who craved a moment of truth from this guarded man readily accepted. We drove far out into the stillness, the desert floor giving way to the immensity of the night. We sat on the hood of his massive truck, the engine ticking as it cooled, the Milky Way a brilliant, overwhelming canopy above us. In that vast, silent space, Julian finally let the armor drop. He didn't talk about gold yields or profit margins. He spoke of the crushing weight of his legacy. The town, the mine, the late father whose name he wore like a restrictive heirloom, and the isolation his wealth had created. He confessed that watching me work, watching me risk everything to save what he was born to, was the first thing that had truly moved him in years. As the wine warmed and the conversation deepened into a dangerous intimacy, his large, rough hand found mine. The contact was immediate and electric, a current that jolted through the stillness. He turned, his whiskey-dark eyes searching mine, the starlight reflecting their intensity. "I don't play games, Seraphina," he stated, his voice low and heavy, filled with a dangerous intent. "If I take this further, there is no turning back. I want you completely." His declaration wasn't a question, but a sensual demand, a full claim on my heart and body. I didn't need to speak. I leaned into him, my heart answering the call before my lips could form the whispered yes, surrendering to the desire that had been simmering between us since our first confrontation. The intensity of our bond was immediate and absolute, a fire fueled by stolen moments of exquisite passion. We communicated in a sensual, private language that existed only in the remote solitude of the desert, away from the dust and the demands of his empire. I allowed myself to believe that the man who held me under the stars, the man who confessed his vulnerability, was the real Julian. But the world, or rather, his other world, violently intruded. His stunning, socially powerful fiancée, Anya, arrived in Silver Gorge without warning. Julian had, with a casual omission that now felt like a profound betrayal, failed to mention the existence of this woman, whose presence immediately clarified my status. The confrontation wasn't direct, but the moment Anya saw me, she dismissed me with a cold, polished smile that belonged on a corporate magazine cover. "You're just a contract, Dr. Reyes," she hissed during a brief, icy encounter, her voice perfectly controlled but laced with diamond-cold contempt. "A temporary fix. Julian marries money and legacy, not temporary thrills." The realization was a devastating physical blow. When I finally faced Julian, the raw heartbreak in my chest quickly hardened into white-hot fury. He didn't deny Anya's claim. "It's a business arrangement, Seraphina," he insisted, his jaw locked tight, refusing to meet my eyes. "It secures everything. It's necessary." "Necessary or convenient?" I challenged, my voice shaking despite my desperate attempt at control, the tears stinging my eyes. "You asked me for honesty, Julian, but you're still hiding behind your father's wealth, trying to buy your security instead of earning it. I don't settle for half-truths or secret places." His insistence that his engagement was merely a transaction, a corporate necessary tool, betrayed the very intimacy we had shared. He had traded truth for certainty, a familiar trap for a man of his standing. I turned and walked away, my final words echoing the deepest insecurity of his guarded heart. "When you decide what you value more, gold or truth, call me." I left him standing alone, forcing him to confront the ruin of the truth he had tried so hard to conceal. I threw myself into my life in the city, the only way I knew to process the crushing disappointment that Julian's betrayal had left behind. Every late-night structural calculation became a defensive shield against the memory of his touch, his breath, his words. I refused his relentless calls and returned the increasingly lavish gifts he sent, determined to prove that my worth and my love weren't for sale or apology. But even as I distanced myself, I couldn't ignore the updates from Silver Gorge. The Devil's Tooth was facing an unexpected and critical failure. My professional fixes, though sound at the time, were not holding against a new, aggressive pattern of seismic activity. Julian, caught in a terrifying vice grip, was losing control of everything. His corporate board was pressuring him to sell the mine to a rival conglomerate, effectively wiping out his family's legacy. He needed me, professionally, to save the structure, and personally, I hoped, to save himself. He flew to my city office, walking in unannounced, a jarring figure against the polished glass and steel of my modern workplace. His tailored suit was rumpled, the sharp angles of his face softened by exhaustion. The cold CEO mask was replaced by the look of a desperate, defeated man. "The mine is unstable, Seraphina," he admitted, his voice rough with defeat. "My entire life is unstable. I need you back." I tried to hold firm against the sudden, physical pull of his presence. "You need a solution, Julian, not me," I stated, my hand gripping the edge of my desk. "I need you," he insisted, closing the final distance between us. I ended the engagement. I walked away from the merger. My breath hitched. He had chosen. He had risked his fortune and his security. It meant nothing without you. I will not lose my mind and the only woman who ever saw past my name. His eyes held mine with a sensual, desperate clarity. He wasn't hiding. He was offering a shattered, honest self. In that moment, I realized he had finally made the impossible choice, proving his honesty not with words, but with an earth-shattering action that was the beginning of my forgiveness. I returned to Silver Gorge, but this time, every step was an assertion of my power. I didn't go back to the dusty cabin. Instead, I moved into the main Vance residence, a quiet, non-negotiable claim on my status. I didn't just fix the mine, I stabilized it completely, implementing a brilliant, costly new design that ensured its future. The night the Devil's Tooth was finally declared safe, Julian found me on the terrace. I was gazing up at the familiar, star-dusted desert sky, the same sky under which he first lowered his guard. He approached me, no longer the demanding patriarch. He was humbled, stripped down to a man ready to build something lasting. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his touch now a gentle, stabilizing reassurance, utterly devoid of the old, grasping control. I realized my father's wealth was built on risk, but I was trying to build my life on certainty. He confessed, turning me to face him. You taught me that the deepest risk is opening your heart, and that's the only one worth taking. He didn't offer a diamond, a deed, or a promise of power. Instead, he presented me with a small, heavy piece of polished, dark iron ore from the deepest, oldest part of the mine. This is the true foundation of everything I own, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. Will you help me build our future on a foundation that's real, Seraphina? On us? His sincerity, forged by the near loss of everything, was intoxicating. My answer was a silent, passionate kiss, a fusion of two lives finally united. Later, as the cool night deepened, he formally proposed. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket, revealing an elegant, understated ring. "The diamond is for our future, Seraphina," he said, his voice thick with emotion. But then, he gently placed the piece of heavy ore on the table beside it. "And this is for our foundation." He took my hand, sliding the ring onto my finger, a reminder that we will always be stronger than gold, and that the only structure worth protecting is the one we build together. I was finally home, standing beside the man who had risked his empire just to be real.